Okay guys, we're gonna give this a go. The boys are playing video games inside and they're being all loud. So I came outside in their fort to read to you. Here we have the wild robot. And last time we read, the robot was on the island. Oh, and it's also windy outside, so forgive my hair. He was on the island, but he was getting pegged with all those pine cones. So we're gonna pick up, we're on chapter 26, if any of you have the book at home. And I'm going to pick up with the chapter called The Performer. Now, up in the sprawling oak, the goose egg was peeping and wobbling around in the nest. "Mama, Mama," said the egg. "I am not your mother," said the robot, and the egg continued peeping and wobbling until nightfall, when the gosling inside settled down to sleep and the egg became quiet and still. Now the robot was about to settle into her own kind of sleep when she heard something in the underbrush below, and Roz peered down from the branches and saw weeds rustling in the moonlight. A creature was crawling past, but the creature stayed low, hiding in the darkest shadows, so Roz couldn't see what it was. Roz wasn't the only one who was watching. A pair of fuzzy ears rose up behind the log. Now the ears belonged to the very hungry badger, and he lay as the shadowy creature came closer and closer. And when the time was right, that badger pounced. And you might expect a creature under attack to run for her life and to defend herself, or at the very least to scream. But when the badger pounced, the creature just rolled onto his back, stuck out her tongue, and died. Now, not only was she dead, but she was rotten, and the badger's face twisted with disgust. Black! What a stench! Now, he pawed at the stinky corpse a few times, and then he gave up. "No thanks," he grumbled to himself. "I'd rather go eat beetles." And the badger hurried off to find a less disgusting meal. Now, when the mysterious creature had the mysterious creature been frightened to death? Or how could her body possibly rot so quickly? Roz was very confused, and the robot became considerably more confused an hour later when the dead creature's ears began to flicker. Her nose began to twitch, and she started to roll over on her feet, and then she went along her way as if nothing ever happened. The robot's voice called down from a tree, "Hey, are you alive or are you dead?" And the creature's voice hissed up in the shadows, "Who's there? Why have you been watching me?" "What you did was unbelievable," said Roz. "I could not look away." "Unbelievable? Really?" The creature's voice seemed to be very softened. "And I thought perhaps I overdid it a little bit when I stuck my tongue out. I was certain you were dead." "Oh, what a lovely thing to say. Were you dead?" "Well, of course not. Nobody can actually come back from the dead. It was just an act." "I don't understand," said Roz. "It's simple. I knew that if I played dead, and I really laid it on thick, then that old badger would be disgusted and he would run off. And that's exactly what happened. We opossums are very natural performers. Don't you know?" Little stinker, he's a possum. "So, you're a possum?" Rosam's computer brain quickly retrieved any information that it had on possums. "Are you a marsupial? Are you nocturnal? And are you known for mimicking the appearance and the smell of dead animals when they are threatened?" It's kind of like he has Alexa in his brain. "It's true. Death scenes are my specialty," said the possum. "But I have a wide dramatic range. Believe me." "I believe you." "Have you done any acting?" said the possum. "I have not," said the robot. "Well, you should. You might enjoy it. You can start by imagining the character that you would like to be. How do you move and speak? What are your hopes? What are your fears? How do you react to others?" Only you can truly understand a character if you have to become another character. Now the two odd creatures just sat there, one in the tree and one in the weeds, and they talked about acting. And the possum went on and on about her various acting methods and her triumphant performances, and our robot absorbed every single word. "But why do you pretend to be something that you are not?" said the robot. "Well, because it's fun," said the possum, "and because it'll help you survive. just as you saw. You never know when it might help you survive." Soon the robot's computer brain was humming with activity. Performing would be a survival strategy. If the possum could pretend to be dead, then the robot could pretend to be alive. And she could act less robotic and more natural. And if she could pretend to be friendly, then she might make some friends. Oh, here comes some wind. Okay, I think we're good. And she might help her to live longer and better. Yes, this is an excellent plan. So Roz wasted no time, and she spoke her next words in the friendliest voice that she could muster. "Madame Marsupial, it would be a great honor and an absolute privilege if you would kindly inform me of your name." Roz's friendly demeanor needed some work, but it was a start. "Oh, yes, of course, said the possum. "My name is Pinktail. And you are?" Now leaves gently shook as Roz climbed down from the tree. "It is the loveliest of pleasure to make your acquaintance, my dear Pinktail." A moment later, the robot stepped into the moonlight. "My name is Roz." "Oh my," the possum gasped. You're a monster." "I'm not a monster. I'm a robot. And I am harmless." "Harmless, really?" "Well, you do seem rather gentle. But I had heard somebody say that you don't eat any food at all, which does not make at all sense. But hopefully that means that you won't eat me." "I will not eat you," said the robot. "Well, I'm glad to hear that," said the possum. And a moment later, she stepped out into the moonlight. "It's very nice to meet you, Roz." A weak smile appeared on Pinktail's pointy face, and Roz thought things were going very well. But she didn't know what to say next, and neither did Pinktail. So the two friendly creatures just stood there together, and they listened to the crickets for a while. "Well, I should go on my way," said Pinktail at last. "Have a good evening," said Roz. "Have the nicest evening, Pinktail. I shall look forward to our next pleasure of meeting each other. Very soon. Soon, I hope. Farewell." And with an awkward goodbye, Pinktail slipped back into the woods, and Roz climbed back into the tree. So I guess that would be really her first friend. Pinktail, her first friend. Okay, the next chapter is called The Gosling. And we are already on chapter 27, but I do remember there's a lot of chapters in here. Let me see. Oh gosh, this one goes all the way to chapter 80, so we got a lot to read. Okay, so we're on chapter 27, and it is The Gosling. Now, the Gosling. Something was about to happen inside of that goose egg. Oh, I had forgotten that he found that goose egg and he was keeping it. Tap, 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 tap. Crunch! And a tiny bill poked through the eggshell, peeped once, and then continued crunching away. The hole grew bigger and bigger, and then, like the robot breaking out of its crate, the hatchling pulled himself out into the world. He lay quietly in his nest with both of his eyes closed, surrounded by chips of broken shell. And when his eyes slowly winked open, the very first thing he saw was the robot looking back. "Mama!" peeped the gosling. "I am not your mother," said the robot. "Mama!" "I am not your mother." "Food! Food!" The gosling was hungry. Of course he was hungry. So using her friendliest voice, Roz said, "Would you like to eat, my darling?" "Food!" was the only response. Now the hatchling was far too young to be helpful, and Roz needed to find a grown goose. So she scooped up the nest with the gosling inside, placed it on her flat shoulder, and then marched through the forest searching for geese. Look at this cute picture. All of my neighbors are coming home from work, and they wonder why I'm sitting in the fort reading a book. The next chapter is called chapter 27. It's The Old Goose. Now, ordinarily, the forest animals would run away from the monster, but they were awfully curious why she was carrying a hatchling on her shoulder. Now, at once, Roz explained the situation, and the animals actually tried to help. A frog pointed Roz up to the squirrels, and the squirrels recommended that he speak to the magpies, and then a magpie sent him over to the beaver pond. And the sound grew soggier, and the grass grew taller, and soon the robot and the gosling were looking across the wide, murky pond. And dragonflies buzzed through the reeds, turtles sunned themselves on logs, and schools of small fish gathered in shadows. And there, floating at the center of a pond, was an old gray goose. A very good morning to you, the robot friendly voice boomed over the water. More cute pictures. There is a little ant crawling across the top of my phone. You might be able to see him in a minute. Now, I have an adorable gosling with me, and the goose just stared. I am in great need of your assistance, said Roz. Actually, the gosling is in need of your assistance, and the goose did not move. Food, peeped the gosling. Food, food. That tiny voice was more than the old goose could bear, and she began gliding across the pond and squawking at the robot. What are you doing with a hungry hatchling? Where are his parents? Well, there was a terrible accident, said Roz, and it was my fault, and this gosling was the only survivor. If there was a terrible accident, then why does your voice sound so cheerful? The goose flapped her wings. Are you sure you didn't eat his parents? Well, I am sure that I did not eat his parents, said Roz, returning in her normal voice. I did not eat anything, including her parents. The goose squinted at the robot. Then she said, Do you know where his parents are? I do not know. Well, they must have belonged to one of the other flocks on the island because nobody in my flock is missing. Will you take the gosling? I most certainly will not, squawked the goose. I cannot take on every orphan I see. You say that it is your fault? It seems to me that it's up to you to get things right. Mamma, peeped the gosling. I have tried to tell him that I am not his mother, said the robot, but he does not understand. Well, you're going to have to act like his mother if you want him to survive. That was that word again. Act. So very slowly, the robot was learning to act friendly. Maybe she could learn to act motherly as well. You do want him to survive, don't you? Said the goose. Yes, I do want him to survive, said the robot, but I do not know how to act like a mother. Oh, it's nothing. You just have to provide the gosling with food and water and shelter and make him feel loved. But don't pamper him too much, and keep him away from danger, and then make sure that he learns to walk and talk and swim and fly and get along with others and look after himself. And that's really all it is to motherhood. And the robot just stared. Mama, food, said the gosling. Now would probably be a very good time to go feed your son, said the goose. Yes, of course, said the robot. What should I feed him? Well, give him some mashed up grass with a few insects in it. That'll be better. So Roz tore several blades of grass from the ground, and then she mashed them up on a ball, and then she dropped the ball into the nest, and the gosling shook his tail feathers and chewed in his very first bites of food. By the way, my name is Loudwing, said the goose, and everybody already knows your name is Roz. But what's the gosling's name? Well, I don't know. The robot looked at her adopted son. What should I name a gosling? He can't name himself, squawked Loudwing. And then with a loud burst of wing beats, the goose fluttered up from the pond and landed right on Roz's head. Water streamed down the robot's dusty body as Loudwing leaned over the nest. Oh dear, he certainly is a tiny thing, said Loudwing. He must be a runt. I'll warn you, Roz, runts usually don't last very long. And with you for a mother, it'll take a miracle for him to survive. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Now, however, the gosling still does deserve a name. Let's see here. His bill is unusually bright in color, and it's actually quite lovely. If I was the mother, I would call him Bright Bill. But you're the mother, so it's up to you. Well, his name will be called Bright Bill, said Roz as the goose fluttered back to the water. And we will live by the pond, where he can be near other geese, and I will find us a sturdy tree nearby. You will do no such thing. The gosling flapped her wings. A tree is no place for a gosling. Brightbill needs to live on the ground like a normal goose. Now Loudwing sized up the robot. Pooh, I suppose you two will need a rather large home. You'd better speak to Mr. Beaver, because he can build anything. He's a little gruff at times, but if you're extra friendly, then I'm sure he'll help you out. And if he gives you any trouble, you just remind him that he owes me a favor. And tomorrow, we'll pick up with this next chapter called The Beavers. What kind of house do you think the beaver will build for a robot and a little gosling? Such a cute story. All right, so tomorrow we'll pick up with the wild robot, and tomorrow we'll start Because of Winn-Dixie. And I thought it might be fun for you guys to tape yourself reading a book out loud and share it on our Google Classroom, because I'd love to hear you guys read. And then I'll also record some funny poems too. So goodbye from the fort, and have a great night.